Alright guys, I have probably my most favorite piece of gear in my hands right now. What we're talking about right now is the Protech Malibu Carry Commission exclusive. And this is the Stonewashed variant. They did a DLC a while ago and just came out about 2-3 weeks ago with this version. And the awesome thing about this is probably my favorite is this pearl button. You also have a green anodized aluminum topographic patterned scale, Stonewashed 20 CV blade, and very stout deep carry pocket clip. They ended up selling out in about a day and a half, and that leads us into the Protech Malibu. And I am just gonna say that it was absolutely well worth the wait. And one thing that I love about the Protech Malibu is that distinct like ting when the blade opens, and I'm gonna show you right now, but just that. Let's see if I can get it good. I don't know if that's picking up at all on camera, but there's like a little metallic ring every time the blade opens, and it's probably my favorite aspect of this button lock, because the only other button lock that I have is the Sencut Watuga. It's like a $35–40 knife. Killer knife for the price. You're getting D2 blade, ball bearing pivot, button lock, and like 4 or 5 different methods of deployment. But on a typical button lock, leaves a little bit to be desired. And the one thing is, this knife has really tacky button lock stick, and you can hear it. Let me see if it'll pick up, but just that click when the detent falls right there. I didn't mind it. On button locks, I prefer a little bit of stick on the lock, not a ton, not like a hard, like you gotta press that button in, but just a little bit of stick I feel like helps a ton and gives me a little bit of security on the fact that that button's not going to slide. And on the Malibu, there's no stick. There is just a little tiny click, but I don't even know if you're going to be able to hear it. You probably can't even hear it because it's barely there. Let me do some size comparisons, not much, just some. And I'm gonna compare my other 3 knives that I carry the most. Like my EDC rotation, I'm just gonna give a little size comparison too. And so we got the Protech Malibu versus the Spyderco PM2. Let me get those handles lined up. So a little bit more blade on the PM2, but actually, as far as cutting edge goes, the Malibu has more cutting edge than the PM2. PM2 is a bigger knife, but side by side, you can see if I line those cutting edges up, the Malibu comes up just a little bit bigger. A lot of that is due to the finger choil on the Spyderco, but actually that is really surprising. I had no idea. You know, I thought bigger knife, bigger blade, and it definitely is a bigger blade. If I line them up perfectly, there's about a 1/4 inch bigger blade on the PM2. But like I said, that cutting edge is more on the Malibu, probably by like a 1/16 of an inch on the Malibu. So more cutting edge on the Malibu, bigger knife on the PM2. Next up is the Fair & Forge Mass Drop Crux. This is what I don't know which came first, the Crux or the Mordax, but either way, it is the same design for the most part, except for the fact that the Crux is a frame lock and not a button lock. But other than that, it is almost identically the same knife. And so you have a significant more amount of blade, or at least cutting edge on the Malibu, but size-wise is almost identical. Again, you have maybe an extra 1/16 of an inch on the Crux versus the Protech. And you can see there, they're very similar size knives. The Crux does have a forward finger choil. The Malibu does not. So a little bit of a difference there. And then probably my other most carried knife is gonna be the Hyphen by We Knives. And if I line these up right, very similar size. The Malibu's a little bit bigger. When it comes to straight handle length, so almost identically sized handles. Cutting edge is significantly bigger on the Malibu, but that is due to that finger choil. If that choil wasn't there, you'd have almost identical cutting edges. But I think this is probably the best comparison because you have 20 CV, 20 CV. This is titanium, but handle materials are both metal. They're very similar weight too. So these are gonna be some heavy competition for which I'm gonna be carrying more. But I think I'm gonna be carrying the Malibu. Let's take a closer look at this topo pattern here. Take a good look at that. Really intricate. And one thing I noticed pretty recently is if you take a look underneath the pocket clip, Protech's clips are awesome. I'm really zoomed in. I'm gonna keep it zoomed in, but Protech's clips are awesome. And with this textured, engraved topo pattern on the aluminum, if you look closely, there is a flat spot right where the pocket clip interfaces with the scale. That helps so much with the smoothness of the knife going in and out of the pocket. There is no snag, there is no grab. And even if we look here, it's a recessed pocket clip with recessed screws as well. So there is nothing to snag when it goes inside the pocket. Absolutely nothing. One thing that does bug me about this knife, and one thing that I will probably be my only complaint, the stop pin and the pocket clip screws are T6, which T6 isn't bad, but when you factor in the fact that the rest of the body screws are hex head screws and not Torx screws, that is a little bit tricky. You can use a Torx bit to get the screws out. I've seen every single person who tears down a Malibu use a T6 bit to tear out the hex head screws. So not necessarily a deal breaker, but if you're using cheap Torx bits, those bits are gonna strip out really, really quickly. But I would like to see Torx bits across the board. Again, that is the only really negative thing I have to say about this knife is the difference in hardware. Pocket clip, stop pin are T6, the body screws and the pivot are hex head. Give and take. But this knife is incredibly smooth. This knife does run on bearings, which helps with that smoothness. And one thing that is cool to see and helps kind of keep everything a little bit clean, I don't know how well any of this is going to pick up on camera, but there is absolutely no weight reduction on the inside of these scales. It's a full piece of aluminum. And with aluminum, it doesn't really need much weight reduction anyway. It's a light enough material that you can get away without having to mill out the insides of the scales. But that's the Malibu. And it's been an awesome, awesome knife. One complaint that I've heard more often than not about the Malibu is the blade stock thickness. And while it is pretty stout, the flat grind does go up pretty high. And so it's not going to be like the most amazing slicer on the planet. One knife that I have that is absolutely blows any knife out of the water by far is in this Tailored by Cortez leather slip. He actually sent these over to me. They arrived at the same time that the Protech did. But awesome pocket slips. I'll do another video on these and Taylor in general. But the knife I have in there that is by far the best slicer on the planet is my QSP Hedgehog. As far as stock thicknesses go, they're almost identical on the back end as far as blade stock thickness. Please focus. No. So they have very similar back ends to them, but the difference is this has a hollow grind, which is insanely better for getting that edge bevel down to micro inches and centimeters and millimeters. Flat grinds are great if you're starting off with a thinner blade stock. Where they fall short in the slicing is when you start with a very thick blade stock, there's only so much for that flat grind to help with. So in my opinion, if you're gonna make a slicing knife, use a hollow grind if you're using a thicker blade stock, or just use a thinner blade stock with a flat grind. But nonetheless, this knife has been an absolute beast when it comes to slicing and cutting and just everyday EDC tasks. Plastic bags, wires, everything like that. This is handled beautifully. And this video I feel like has gone on long enough, so I will stop the rant here. But let me know if you guys picked up one of these carry commission Malibus. Let me know down in the comments, or what knife that you have on your radar to pick up here pretty soon. You know, we have blade shows coming through the later of the year. I know SHOT Show just happened, so let me know what you guys have as your grails for this year. And with all those things said, until next time, peace.